the best, I think, has to be then you started your career as a CA, and then you also worked with EY for various roles. So when did it first occur to you that you'll be entering the world of entrepreneurship, and how did you go about it? What was that idea that you landed on, so that you want to take these steps and make this idea into a reality?
So, to start off with my introduction, as you said, I'm a CA by education. I started my career with Ernst& Young, started in 2003. Uh, uh, Spent around 5 years there, and then it was always there in my mind because entrepreneurship runs in my blood. I belong to a business class family, so it was always there in my mind that one day I would do something of my own. So after 5 years, I finally took the plunge and started my first venture. And as they say that for every one good idea, there are 1,000 bad ones, and sometimes it's tough to tell the differences. And when I also started my first entrepreneurial stint, that was a bad idea. So my first idea was that I wanted to teach Indian culture to students outside India, sitting here in India, but teach Indian culture, Indian history, Indian mythology to the students outside India. Worked for around 9 to 12 months in that idea, and later on I realized that there were no takers for it because there was so much free content available online. People really were not willing to pay for learning about India. So that was my initial idea. Then I shifted my focus from teaching Indian culture to teaching academic subjects. So something on the lines of, I'm not sure, but you must have heard of a company called Tutor Vista. So what we used to do was that we used to hire teachers here in India. They used to interact with students in the US and the UK one on one through an video, audio, and chat, just like we are doing right now. And they would teach the academic subjects to the students in the US. So that's how my first entrepreneurial journey and the first idea began. My differentiating factor in that business was that we were the only Indian company which was approved by US federal government to provide tutoring in the US there. And we were directly working with the US federal government. And so our business was more of B2B rather than B2C. So that was the first idea. But again, started off with a very bad idea. Later on, we fine tuned it to make business sense out of it.
Great, sir. Great. So the concept is that not a lot of them also hail from business backgrounds, as you were saying. So what advice would you like to give them who do not hail from business background but want to take up the entrepreneurial journey? And I think the question of millennial is where do you find that idea? How do you look for that idea to go about it? What are the source that drives it?
Yeah, so I think the first rule of entrepreneurship is that there are no rules. And if you want to become an entrepreneur, don't look for ideas in others. I am not, the only thing that I can do is I can inspire others to think on their own. I am no one to really give them the ideas. And especially in today's world where the digital has opened the opportunities to the limitless boundaries. It's the idea is no one's monopoly. And as we say that in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the experts there are few. So if you ask an expert like me, I may give you very few options, but you guys are the beginners. You have limitless thought process. So don't look for an idea from someone else. Keep looking for the opportunities everywhere. I mean, these days opportunities are everywhere. And the only thing that I can say is in the life you face choice between what's popular and easy but it's wrong, as against something what's difficult but right. So always take the right and difficult path. Short run it may look like a wrong path, but in the longer run it will turn out to be the best profitable as well as the value creation path.
Truly said, sir. So what about that market switch from Syscom EduTech to FMCG market? What was the key difference, and how do you measure that standard operational procedure? Like how different was the two markets?
Yeah, so I think completely different markets altogether. One was the Syscom EduTech, the education venture, uh, wherein we were not directly dealing with the consumers. And second, the Organic Harvest, it's a consumer facing business. So altogether different businesses altogether. The only thing that I would say, one thing was common in both the businesses, that we always tend to aim for excellence, be it a B2B or B2C. If you think about the customers or the consumers of your services or the product, you will excel in any field. So don't go by anything else, not the investors or the stakeholders or the shareholders or anyone else. Your primary focus should be your consumers or the customers who are actually going to consume your product or the services. So yeah.
So, like as you were saying, so before going to Organic Harvest, before going with that idea, did you run any market assessment, like risk analysis, potential assessment before entering into the market? And so for the entrepreneurs, like especially if the market is very new for them or the market is very saturated, how should they go about it?
So actually, even though I am a chartered accountant for namesake, I don't believe in all these market analysis and the numbers here. Because if Henry Ford once famously said that if I had asked my consumers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They would have not been the cars invented then. So the numbers, the market analysis, and the past trends really don't matter. What matters is the knack of yours to identify what the consumers really need or it may need in future. So I am not a really market analysis guy, even though we do a lot of analysis now because we have reached at a stage wherein we are bound to do it. But when you are starting up, don't really look for the market trend or the market size. If you are convinced that you can make a business sense out of it, or you can this is a business idea which you can spend your life with, just go for it. You will find out or you will figure out the way to make money out of it.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So with so many brands coming up in the space of cosmetic, organic cosmetic space. So do you think, like, how do you establish that value for your product? Like, how do consumers have that like, bang on these key essentials of your product? How do you retain that value, I would say?
So we oftenly said within our organization that the consumers don't buy your product; they buy why you do it. They don't buy what you make; they buy why you make it or why you do it. So it's very important to define why of your brand or why of your services, and because if your purpose of the brand is clearly defined and communicated to outside world, and somebody who believes in that purpose, they will go to an extra mile to make sure that they include your product or services in their day-to-day life. So that's why we say that it is very important to define your why, purpose, or the what we call the reason for you to exist. And that's what we have done in Organic Harvest as well. We have clearly defined the purpose of our brand, which is that we want to make this world a better and beautiful place to live in, and we want to leave it better than we found it. So it's a such a beautiful statement, wherein being in organic space, it gives us a numerous opportunity to do a lot of good things around it. And that's what we clearly or consciously do to communicate the purpose of the brand to the outside world. And if you are able to do it successfully, I'm sure there'll be a lot of takers for the brand. And then all these factors like pricing, the product quality, the distribution, the packaging really don't matter. All what matters is that purpose of the brand should be clearly defined to your consumers or the outside world. That's how we have been trying to differentiate ourselves with the rest of the crowd, or what you call the rest of the competitors.
That's amazing, sir. So what do you think, which channel connects with the audience you target the most? Like, has there been any failures or misfires that have happened in past when you choose a channel?
Sorry, I missed your question. What did you say?
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible, but I missed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so I was asking which channel connects to the audience the most? Like, how do you target the audience, and has there been any failures or misfires in the past?
So uh, I'll ask you. I'll answer your second question first.
Yeah.
Failures, yes, absolutely yes. And what we believe is that if you are not failing, you are not doing anything revolutionary. So it's very important to keep failing in the startup world.
Yes.
Even if out of your 100 failures you come out with one success, that success will be big enough to negate the effect of 100 failures. So yes, we have also been fortunate enough to have failed multiple times in last 7 years.
Yes.
Regarding the consumer connect, so for us, the digital world is the best way to connect with the consumers. It gives us the opportunity to communicate with them in a two-way thing, wherein we communicate, they reply, they communicate, we reply, and that's the best way to communicate with the consumers. That's what we believe. So digital is the way we want to communicate with the consumers, and we sell our products all across. So digital, the general trade, modern trade, in the physical world as well. But the communication, when we talk about the purpose of the brand, the offering of the brand, digital is the way medium where we do with the consumers.
That's great, sir. So, your story is very similar to Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, who started with working in accountancy department of PwC. So how much do you recommend having a background from finance to help in your business? How much has it helped you? And what do you recommend, especially for people like me, students like me, who do not hail from a business, like, do not hail from financial team, so finance team? So how do they go about it?
So it's important to have the control over the numbers, even in a startup world, or if you become big in future, because ultimately the numbers are something which drive the business. It's always, I mean, it's always fancy to say, don't go after the numbers, but look at the bigger opportunities. But the practical life does not work this way. Uh, at the end of the day, you have to have a decent top line as well as the bottom line. The bottom line ensures that you survive or you thrive. It's important to have the knowledge of the numbers, but at the same time, it's not a prerequisite. So it's not something that a budding entrepreneur needs to have before taking the plunge. So I think all of us have some weaknesses and some strengths. It's always good to play on your strengths and let the other people take over your weaknesses. And that's why, so when you start building up the team, you should identify what your strengths are. You will play on your strength, being the promoter of the company, and then you either hire or have some co-promoter who can take over your strength, the weaknesses. So uh, I would say, for someone who does not have the numbers as the strength points, have either the team take over it or the co-promoter, co-founder take over the numbers part of it.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So I think this question everybody is seeking an answer for is how should a new startup go about finding investment for their venture?
I think the foremost and the most important part in building an organization is you should lay the foundation of the organization very strong, and you should not be running after the investors. If your foundation of the organization is strong enough, the investors will come after you. The investors will come and fund your projects. So keep the bigger picture in mind. Just ensure that you are obsessed with what the consumers are looking for, or you're obsessed with your consumers and customers. So don't run after the investors. Investors are the least priority with the which a startup should be having. I know it may sound a little impractical when you come to a startup world, when you have the finances to take care of, but uh, it's rather advisable to start small and build the organization which has strong foundation, then starting big and collapsing on the way up. So as in within our organization as well, I never ran after the investors, and now after 7 years also, it's a strongly built organization which can survive on its own finances. So इन्वेस्टर्स आ जाएंगे यार, उनका तो अरे उनको पैसा बनाना है आपसे, आपको उनसे पैसा नहीं बनाना. So don't run after the investors.
So this is a very good myth that you're breaking for us, because we are just always like, अच्छा investment, how will we find investment for it?
बी स्कूल में से, अरे बी स्कूल में यही सिखाया जाता है, इन्वेस्टर्स कैसे लाना है. डोंट रन आफ्टर द इन्वेस्टर्स. इन्वेस्टर्स विल कम आफ्टर यू.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
So since we cannot overlook the backdrop of a crisis situation that we're facing right now,
Sure.
what are your thoughts about it? What are the key learnings that you would like to share for the ones who are just starting out or have already started in the business, are ready with their startup? So how should one be very prepared for situations like these?
So there is a saying that in business there may be nothing scarier than facing an existential crisis. And this pandemic has actually all of us, including the startups, the middle age companies, and the already big ones, have faced the existential crisis to a certain extent. And the world looks one way during the peacetime, but very different when you have to fight every day for your life, for your existence. So this crisis has actually been an eye opener for all of us, from this smallest of the companies to the biggest of the ones. We actually in fight to have bigger and bigger and bigger top line, we tend to take our eyes off from the bottom line. And this crisis has taught us a very important or fundamental rule of the business, that the businesses can survive only on the bottom line, not on the top line. So that's one biggest learning which I have had during this crisis, that build a business which is fundamentally strong and which makes profit for you. Just don't build businesses which are top line heavy businesses, and bottom line you are bleeding the money. So because that's the fundamental of a business. You need to make money to ensure that you survive, and in the longer run you thrive. That's how you keep investing and keep plowing back that money back in the business. You cannot just keep running after the investors to raise another round of money.
Yes, sir.
So this is a very I think a blessing in disguise for all of us. This crisis, I am not seeing it as a challenge, but it is an opportunity to redefine all our cost structures, all our business model, so that in the longer run we all survive. Yeah, we have to survive, and we have to thrive as well.
True, sir. So we would also like to know a little bit more about Organic Harvest, and how did you come up with the idea, and what are the products looking as of now? So we have a little some students from the entrepreneurship department who are also working in the same field. So it would be a great insight for them as well.
Sure. So as I said, I was enjoying my first venture, which was into online tutoring. It was literally a cash cow. So at one point in time, we were doing almost $25 million of top line, and more than $10 million of bottom line. But one thing was constantly bothering me was that one day would come that government would change the regulation, or anything which is based on government grants, it can come crashing down any day. So that's exactly what happened in 2015, wherein the government changed the regulation and I had to shut down that business. So simultaneously, I started looking for alternative opportunities. In 2011, I saw that the consumer-facing business gives you an opportunity to build value in the business in the longer run. Within consumer, there are multiple industries. So one is pharma, then you have home care, and then you have personal care as well. Food, I never wanted to go for food, because food preference of consumers changes after every 50 kilometers in our country. So I thought it was very difficult to build a pan-India brand with the food in the food industry. So that's why I left food. Pharma and home care, multiple challenges around it. There were prerequisite that in pharma you have to have some technical background. I never had the technical background. Home care, it's a highly commoditized business. So I selected personal care. Now within personal care, we have the products like herbal, we have products like natural, and we have organic. Now organic is what we call as the purest form of nature. it does not have any harsh chemicals inside it, and by virtue of it, you need to have certification to call your product as an organic product, unlike any other green product which is herbal, natural, or Ayurvedic. So I thought that was a clear differentiating point, which, or clear communicating point with the consumers. And there was no other company which had the complete range of organic personal care products. So that's how I thought that could be the next big idea that I can look forward to. That's how Organic Harvest happened.
So what an idea, sir. Definitely was. So there
Thank
are a
you.
lot of students who will be venturing out now and are stumbling on this particular concept of what idea and how do they come to this idea. So they're struggling to find a way to that idea. So what do you
Correct.
think would be best for them? How is elimination, or how do they go about it?
Yeah. So as I said, I can only inspire you. I cannot give you the idea, and because ideas are the currency, today's currency. so, so uh, uh, in nutshell, I think just keep your eyes, ears, and nose open here. If it is there in within you, it's if that fire is there in you to become an entrepreneur and to have you to become your own boss, you will
Yeah.
one day crack it. Does not matter if you are uh, living, sleeping, eating, or drinking with that idea of becoming an entrepreneur one day. You will definitely get that one big idea on your own. So you don't need to have someone who can really handhold you and guide you with that idea. The only thing is that just keep looking for inspirational people or inspirations which help you in getting to that idea.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure. You're definitely an inspiration, sir.
Thank you.
You are inspiring us. So, like now is the next step of finding that team. So, how important do you think is team when you start out, and how does one go about, and what if I'm starting to do? What kind of experience should I have on my team? What kind of impression should I hold?
Sorry, I missed your question again.
I'm sorry, sir. Am I audible
Yeah,
now? Yeah.
yeah.
I was saying, so how important is team when you start out, and how do you find that team, or what kind of experience should you have to hold that team together?
So, as I said, nobody has all the. One single person has no does not have all the strengths and does not have all the weaknesses as well. So when you are starting up, it's very important to identify your strengths and catch on to that strengths. Then identify the remaining points or your weaknesses and start hiring the people or having someone joining you as a co-promoter for that initial team. Uh, uh, Ideas, funding, everything will fall into place if you have the right mix of team which is starting up. Because even if I think most of the bigger companies, you take Apple, you take Nike, you take maybe Red Bull and Tesla as well, all the bigger brands, they did not have the perfect business model or perfect product when they started. What they had was the perfect the team mix. Apple, they had both the Steves. So they one was the visionary, one was the tech guy. So building the team, initial team, is the most important part when you're starting up. The rest of the things will fall into place. You will definitely figure out the way if the founding team is strong.
Sure, sir. Hoping for that, sir. So as you were talking previously about the failures and how failures have built you in a way that you are at today. So are there any specific lessons that you would like to share from your startup journey, and that our students can take inspiration from or guide them?
Yeah, so as I said, we take failures as the learning blocks, and we keep talking within the organization that if you are not failing, you are not trying hard enough, or you're not trying new things. So we actually encourage people to fail, and the most important thing is that you don't keep repeating the same mistake again and again. If you are doing the new mistakes, that means you are learning and moving forward. So keep doing the new mistakes, keep learning, and keep moving forward. Don't do the same mistakes again and again and again. Then if you're doing that, then you're not moving up, or you're not moving forward. You are standing there and doing the same things.
True, sir.
So yes, keep failing, keep doing the mistakes.
So I hope not an exam, sir.
Exams is just yeah, not for you, but it's just a stamp on the paper. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So before we part, would you recommend any books or courses for the students?
Yeah, so books, as you also mentioned during your conversation, the Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, that's one of
Yes.
my favorite books. And then there are certain others. So one is Hard Thing About Hard Things, that's second. And there is one more, that's Start With Why. So these are some of the books that's always been there in my favorite list of reading. There is no course. The only course is you get out there, do your hands dirty, and learn and move forward.
Great, sir. So it was a delight having a conversation with you. I would like the SEC.
Thank you, likewise.
Thank you, sir. I would like the SEC members to take over now. Thank you so much, sir, for all the insights.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I'm all ears now.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Gargi. That was a wonderful conversation, and I'm sure our students have picked up a lot from this. I would now request the students to post any questions on the chat box that they have for sir. Jaikumar will go in turns. Jaikumar, we'll start with you. You can put yourself off mute and ask your question directly.
Hello, Rahul sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So, sir, my question was, what drove you from this MBA, CA, and then into this organic industry? What things are that drove you into this organic industry? What bottlenecks you faced, and what advice would you like to give to the budding entrepreneurs who wish to emerge into the market?
So one thing that took me from education to the consumer space was a clear vision that I wanted to create value in the business. So I was never running after the short term the profits or the short term revenue. So education venture of mine first because it was a government grant based business, so I was really not building any value in it. That's why I shifted to consumer facing business. And within consumer, organic was space wherein we found a clear gap area and something a clear talking point and a good story around the brand. So that's why we chose organic personal care. Advices, yeah, I think we have talked about it during our conversation as well. So just get the right team in place. Hello. Yeah. So just get the right team in place, and you will figure out the way how to move forward in the business. Even if you have a half baked idea, and if you are a good mix of inspired guys, then you will figure out the way to move forward.
Thank you so much, sir. And sir, that your point that you made, that opportunities are available in the market, money is there in the market, just you have to grab it, was very inspiring. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't run after the investors' money. Yeah? Investors will run after you if you have a sustainable business model.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Mrinal, I think you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Hello, sir. That was an amazing session. So, I'm Rinal and I'm from MBA One. So, sir, I've been a digital marketer and I've also actually run a Shopify store before, and I understand how important it's to define your target audience, right? So, how do you define your super consumer as? And if you could actually tell us a little about how and actually what research went into defining it, because already in the already in the organic space, there are a lot of competitors like Qtrove and Organic Tattva. So how do you go about that?
So Sorry, can you repeat your first part of it? I understood the second part. What was the first? The
I
consumer
just
profile.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know that how do you define your target audience and your super consumer? Because like there's already so many competitors in the
Understood.
organic sector. Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, I think when we started out, there was not a particular consumer profile that we were going after for. And as I said, once you are there, you have got your hands dirty, you will figure out the way. We also did the same way. So as we moved along in the journey, we started selling our product. We found out that most of our consumers had certain things in common. One was that they were all between the age, or not all, but majority of them all, or between the age group of 25, 26 to 35. Second, they were majority in majority urban population. Third, majority of them were working class. So 25 through 35 urban working class. That's how we define our target audience. And if you look at these traits, some things will become common, that they would be mostly, or actually 100% of them would be digitally active, especially on social media. uh, they would be going at least once in a month to salon, and they would be buying they would be doing major shopping on the digital platform only. So the first subset was the defining the age group and the demographics, which happened over a period of time as we moved along. The second subset is a common thing which we drawn out of the first subset. And in terms of the differentiating factor, as I talked about during our conversation as well, that we don't define our brand by what we do or what we provide. We define our brand by why we do it. And why of our brand and the purpose of the brand has been clearly defined and communicated to the consumers. And that's how we are trying to differentiate ourselves with the competitors. And if you see the bigger brands in the world like Apple and Nike, they have done it quite beautifully. So Apple does not make the best laptops or best mobile phones in the world. What they have done is they have defined their purpose of the brand, which is challenge the status quo. And challenge the status quo, that's why they have, and make the already complicated products easier so for the consumers. So the why of the brand has been so clearly defined that they do well in all the industries they enter into. Similarly, Nike, they don't talk about their shoes. They reward the athletes, and they reward the athleticism. So that's how the purpose of the brand should be clearly defined, and that's how you can differentiate. So it does not matter, even if today we being the leader in organic personal care industry, if there are hundreds of players in future, if we clearly define our brand, we will always remain ahead of the herd.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, sir. Thank you. Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Hi, sir. My name is Nishan Nair. I have a specific question for you. Sir, one more thing. I also happen to be a chartered accountant like you, and I felt very personally inspired by your story. Sir, I have a specific question with regard to your manufacturing strategy for your brand Organic Harvest. So my question is that when you're deciding the manufacturing for these products, are you outsourcing the manufacturing to a third party, or are you doing the manufacturing in-house? This is my question.
So I'll take up your question very personally, because being the CA, I have close connection with you, and I know how hard you must have gone through to become a CA. So as far as the manufacturing goes, it varies industry to industry, but within our industry, I can talk about our industry. Our industry, the manufacturing is very small part of the whole value chain. The value lies in personal care or in beauty industry. The value lies in your ability to sell the product to the consumers. Manufacturing is the least value added activity in the whole value chain. And at the same time, because manufacturing is it involves setting up the factory, the machinery, and everything. It is very capital intensive. So it's not at all advisable in our industry to set up your factory in the beginning. There are multiple third-party manufacturers available in the market, good quality manufacturers who can do the manufacturing as per your quality standards, as per your processes. You should, when you are building a brand, you should be focusing on how to sell the product, how to communicate your purpose to the consumers, and how to differentiate yourselves against the competitors, rather than getting yourself sucked in to the manufacturing. It's actually a very complicated process, the manufacturing, but at the same time, it's not a much of a value added in the whole chain. So that's what we also did. We never got into the manufacturing directly. We set up the processes, the quality standards very stringent in the beginning, and we asked the third party manufacturer to just copy paste it and keep doing what we are asking him to do. So yeah.
Thank you for the response, sir. Mayank, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay. So it was very inspirational listening to you. My question was same as Nishant. That was about the quality standards and how is it wise to outsource manufacturing of a product-centric brand. I have a question also. So how do you find the correct team? Because you alone can't do everything. How do you find the correct team that will see the same vision as you are seeing?
So there is no set formula for this. Initially, you may have to go by your gut feel. You may have to go by maybe as weird thought process as that this is my roommate, I will start my first venture with him. So it doesn't matter. As long as you are starting up, you are taking that plunge. As I said, you will figure out the way during your journey. But there is no set formula. It can be a hunch driven. It can be the data driven, like that I am good at numbers, you are good at marketing, let's collaborate and start the venture. Or I am good at managing the organization, you are good at tech, let's start the venture. So there is no set formula, but so yeah, you will have to figure out yourself. Yeah. Unfortunately, I cannot give a set formula for this.
Thank you, sir. Nikita, you can go ahead with your question. Nikita Chitlangia.
Hi, sir. Good evening. So my question is, one can have many ideas. How do you know you have the right one?
So I mentioned about it during the conversation as well. An idea should be worth on two respects. One is that should be good enough for you to lose your sleep over. Something which does not let you sleep in the night, something which gets you out of bed in the morning. That's one benchmark that I always keep thinking about this idea. And second is that it should make some business sense as well, because ultimately the businesses are run on numbers, or businesses are run on profits and the top line. So only these two benchmarks. If you are passionately thinking about that one business idea, that's one tick mark. Second is, if you think that this can be a big enough opportunity for me as a promoter and for the other stakeholders like employees or investors, if there are, to make money out of it, then I think these are the two only benchmarks. If they both of them get ticked, you should definitely go for it. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Raghunandan, you can go ahead with your question.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So actually you answered part of my question already. The question I had was, actually I worked for a short tenure at a small scale environment consultancy. They provided wastewater treatment solutions. So their product was good, but I saw that the promotion was extremely difficult because of, especially due to the lack of awareness or empathy around the environment, especially in our country. So even though the sector or the domain is different, I thought that was kind of similar to what your product is, organic harvest. So
Yeah.
especially in the initial years, how did you penetrate this market? How did you promote this green or organic product?
So we resorted to one-to-one communication, and we were fortunate enough to have some money in the business, which I earned from my first venture. I put that money into the second venture. So we employed almost 500 beauty advisors, what we call them. They are the trained, calibered sales girls who would interact one-on-one with the consumers. We put them in the high footfall general trade, modern trade outlets. They would interact one-on-one with the consumers. They would tell the difference between the organic versus the non-organic products, and then sell the products to them. So that was one of the activities that we got indulged into. We never had big budget to come up with a TVC or do all kind of the above the line advertisement activities. So that's one activity that we did, and it actually paid off well. By doing that, we were able to reach out to directly to the consumers and tell them the exact difference with our offering as well as against the competitors. But having said that, it depends on the business to business. If it is a B2B business, then the strategy can be completely different. If it is a B2C in the beauty, that's what we did. Even within B2C, if you are into food or any other home care or pharma based product, you may have to resort to other completely different activities. But that's what we did, and it really paid off well for us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have another special question from Vijay Balaji. Can you unmute and ask your question? Vijay, are you on call?
Yeah, I'm on call. Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, sir. This is Vijay from MBA first year. So how do you interact, follow up, and track the production from farming? So you say it's being outsourced or you're tracking the quality. So in that case, the agriculture market is very, very vast and it's an informal market. But we are taking that and then processing it and giving it to a very formal market in personal care. So in this process, how do you follow up or track with an informal market like farmers or the farming community? How do you do that?
So our life is not really not that miserable. We really don't have to coordinate with the farmers, take the organic produce and then process it in-house. That's not what we do. Okay. We have most of our ingredients are imported. So we get the organic raw material from countries like US or Japan as well. All the ingredients that we import, they come with a certification of organic. Okay. So there are only 3 renowned organizations worldwide which certify any organic product. So all the raw materials that we buy, they come with the certification. So in a way, our job is made much easier because of this organized chain of supply. Okay. Once we procure the raw material, we give it. So we directly buy the raw material. We don't outsource the procurement. Okay. We buy the raw material. We have the in-house R&D as well. Okay. So the IP is within the company. And then we have a quality control team sitting there in this third-party manufacturer facility who takes care of the processes, the formulation, the packaging material, everything, and then the products are dispatched from the factory. So that's how we have been able to tightly control the quality.
Thank you.
Since we're short on time, we'll take the last 2 questions, and the questions that remain unanswered, we will send the same to sir, and in return send the answers to you on email. So we'll go ahead with Kaustav's question now. Kaustav, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, good evening. This is Kaustav from the MBA Innovation and Entrepreneurship MBA 1. And
so which part of the country are you from?
Sir, Bombay, sir.
Mysore, okay, interesting.
Bombay, sir,
Bombay, okay.
Yes, sir.
Bombay now
So,
is
sir,
getting back on its toes, yeah. Earlier Bombay and Delhi was bad. I think it's now
right.
it's not that bad.
It's recovering, yes, sir. Better.
Still, the lifeline
Anyways,
of the city is still not there, the local, but
right, sir.
still getting back to the normal thing.
Right, sir. So anyway,
Sure,
sir,
good.
while you make your intent about the brand very clear, as in being organic is your thing, on the product side of things, how open are you to adapting alternate and more eco-friendly packaging solutions for the same products in the future?
So I think it's a no-brainer for me to answer this. This is a clear having a sustainable packaging is goes very well with the theme of the brand, and that's in the longer run we all will have to resort to. But unfortunately, as I said, there are certain things. I mean, the business should make the numbers of the business should make sense as well. If you're not, if you keep doing all the things right, and your bottom line is not making sense, you will fall, or the idea will fall apart. So during our journey, we have also taken some decisions which we know that we will have to change in the longer run. But looking at the health of the business and the bottom line, we have taken some decisions to really start off the project. Once we are there in the journey, yes, absolutely, we'll have to also resort to the sustainable packaging as well. But that's something that we believe that can be taken care of once you attain a certain scale. As we say, the beggars cannot be choosers. So startups, the promoters of the startups, they are actually the beggars here. You need to start from somewhere and keep improving yourself.
Right, sir. So you are aiming for sustainability in the longer run eventually.
Absolutely.
To get there. Right,
Absolutely.
sir. And another question adding on to the same theme is how many recurring customers do you have, and how do you ensure that that's an important part of your business? Like, how do you do you think that's an important part of your business?
So yeah, I think that's the most important part of the business, especially for us, because most of the businesses, I think what they do is they keep running after adding new consumers, and they forget to take care of their existing ones. We do it other way around. So we take care of the existing ones, and the existing ones will become the mouthpiece of your brand, and they will get the new consumers for you. So nothing to deny this fact that the existing consumers are very important for us. Being a digital first brand, we have the liberty to take care of them. We can communicate with them. We know what their profile is. We know who really those consumers are. And so there is a special program for our recurring consumers, which has been further divided into various categories. But yes, that's a very important part of your business. If you have to sustain in the longer run, the existing consumers should be taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Next, can we have Kaivalya Joshi's question? Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, sir. So my question is, would you consider trading a majority of equity stake for investment that is higher than your valuation? And my second question is, what is your viewpoint on royalty-based investments?
Actually, I consider the investors are the most useless herd of the community in the whole value chain. Don't worry about the investors or losing the majority in the startup. But yes, you have asked it, so let me answer it. It's always advisable to keep the majority of the shareholding to yourself or within the close group of co-promoters when you are starting up, or at least till the point wherein you have reached at a scale when the organization is professionally driven. Till the time the company needs you, you should try to keep the majority within yourself. But having said that, should not become rigid enough to do it even at the stake of survival of the organization. So if you have to take a call between the survival and the losing majority, obviously the survival will should prevail. And royalty based investment doesn't matter. If you have to make a PNL, if it makes sense for you to have a royalty based investor, and after paying off the royalty you make decent amount of money for yourself and for the other stakeholders, you should definitely go for it. What's the harm?
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir, for answering all our questions. We still have a few questions which, due to shortage of time, will not be able to go through. But all these questions will be sent to sir. And now it's the moment where we announce the winners for Why Organic. So Why Organic was a competition which we had launched for our students to see their creativity and out-of-the-box thinking. And this was indeed, I think, one of the toughest decisions we had to make this morning, and send a shortlist to sir. And so this is the time where we declare the winners. So the winners for this are the team which is, we got the runs, which is Malvika Joshi, Shantanu Puranik, and Josh Jain. And I'll also share their poster.
I can hear the yays in the background.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
Good
Is
job,
everyone.
Good
Hi.
job.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Is the poster visible to everyone?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so that was our winning team. We also have a special mention, which is the Wizard, which was by Ganesh A. He also had a very interesting poster. And that's the poster. That was a nice quirky poster that we received.
Correct. Correct.
But nevertheless, all the submissions that we got were brilliant. And like I said, it was very tough for us to narrow down on a few and then finally select the winner.
That's right.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your entrepreneurial journey. It has inspired a lot of people listening to you. I hope that turns out to be seeds for the next generation entrepreneurs. Thank you, sir. We look forward to hosting you again. And this time, probably on our campus itself. Thank you, sir.
Look forward. Look forward. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, sir.